The first major one was the rotary on Sparks Avenue.
Right.
What else is sort of being thought about?
Right now, the NPDC is talking about some traffic improvements at Fairgrounds Road and Old South Road, and also at Surfside Road and Bartlett Road. Those are two, really problem intersections that need to be addressed.
Nat, from the NPNEDC's perspective, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, she's right. Right now, the Bartlett Road is sort of bumped up due to some land acquisition easement issues. And the Fairgrounds to Old South works very well, by the way, turning right, because there's I guess I would say, an undefined turning lane there that's been there for 50 years. But that has bumped up as well because of the fire station move. And the land is there. We have the land. We don't have to take any easements to put the roundabout in there. But the real major clog, and it's been that way for, I don't like to keep saying since I was a kid. I'm going to try to come up with something better than that.
For at least 60 years.
Before we knew that a car was a problem. The high school intersection is arguably the worst intersection in, I think, anywhere I've ever been. It's terrible, and it needs to be a roundabout. But it's going to take some time with the hospital houses, the school committee, and it's a big project. It isn't as easy as the other ones, but that will make a huge change in the backup that happens only on two sides. And there's no backup on Atlantic, and there's no backup on Prospect because you enter the intersection just by being in that spot, where the other ones you have to sort of drive through it.
Actually, I've seen some backups on Prospect.
Well, it isn't as common as that on that
True,
side.
true.
So.
Matt, you have a different perspective on traffic here than perhaps the rotaries and so forth are the answer.
Yeah, I'm not. I actually will have to admit, I think I like the rotary now that it's in. I think
The roundabout.
The roundabout. Sorry, roundabout, rotary. I like the mini roundabout. Although if you do notice that it's backed up from the rotary to that roundabout quite a bit right now. But I think we've moved a lot into the Mid-Island, and there's a lot more traffic generation to that area, and that's one of the things we're going to have to deal with.
At times you've been a proponent, have you not, of limiting the vehicles allowed on the island?
Yeah, I was 15 years ago. I still believe it. I think I think I might be 20 years ahead of myself, or 30 years ahead of myself. But at some point, I think we have to.
Or 100 years behind yourself.
Yeah, I wish I'd been there then. But at some point you have to admit that there's, unless we're going to tear up downtown, there's a limited amount of, amount that can drive through there. And what happens in some communities, pick Aspen and some of the other places, they get busier and busier. They close one street, they close two streets. You have to end up with an inbound route and an outbound route for taxis and buses. So if you don't, at some point, if you don't limit it in some way, whether that be soft limitations or a hard cap of some type, if you don't do that, other things happen to you. And so that's where I think, while I think a lot of the changes Nat has done and the planning has done have been great, I also think that we have to be able to admit to ourselves that there is a certain number that we're not going to be able to put 100,000 cars on Nantucket.
The statistics are interesting, though. I don't have last year's, but for this year, and these are the Steamship Authority statistics on how many vehicles come to the island, and also Martha's Vineyard. And for the calendar year through mid-June,
End of June,
through mid-year, there was an increase of, you could argue, 6 cars that came to the island. There were a fair number more trucks, but the question is whether or not the over 20-foot trucks go back.
Yes.
We can't establish necessarily that the under 20-foot trucks go back because they're SUVs. Some of the big SUVs fit in that category and so forth.
Some of the box trucks are considered trucks.
Right.
So
but on the other hand, I would argue that the box trucks and so forth, for the most part, are not having a big impact on traffic. It's hard to say, but you go into one of these rotaries and intersections and so forth, and it's virtually all cars.
Yeah.
or private vehicles.
I would argue it depends what time of day.
Well, true.
7 in the morning
True,
and
true.
4 or 5 at night
Yeah, I mean,
when everyone's
the work
going to work and coming home. They're there.
Just like everywhere else.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah.
more in their own private vehicles than they are necessarily in vehicles that belong to their employer, although some of them are, clearly.
Well, one of the barriers the biggest barrier really to addressing some of these issues is funding. Through the NPDC, there's some federal and state funding allocated each year to projects, but sometimes we use that money in advance to forward some initiative, like the in-town bike path or the Humming Pond Road bike path or some of those things. And unless money's budgeted through the capital planning process, through tax overrides, that kind of thing, that's where the buck stops. Really.
Yeah, I'd like to elaborate on what Leslie just said. That's actually a good point. I think we've reached a point in Nantucket. I'm going to try to talk about things in a specific way. I'm really concentrating on staying on topic.
Keep yourself.
Which is not easy for me. Nantucket is a very fortunate community. Okay, I mean, all the things that we've been doing, like the sewer reconstruction downtown, we're replacing things that are 100 years old that you could arguably say was built for nothing. I mean, we had sanitary sewer in Nantucket 100 years ago.
Right.
A lot of the things that we're seeing today, what Leslie's talking about with the tip money from the state and federal, is only limited to about, I think, $350,000 a year, if I'm not mistaken. It's something like that. And we have to pay for all the engineering for all these bike paths. So we're paying for parts of this stuff ourselves through the general fund or through tax overrides or whatever you want to talk about. But I think we've reached a point where we're going to have to stop paying for some things ourselves. I mean, we passed a $40 million school without even a discussion. The article wasn't even called. This community will spend money if they think it's worthy. I think we've reached the point, in order to fix some of these things in our, let's just say 10 years future, we're going to have to pay for some of it ourselves. We're not going to have a private donor like we did for Humming Pond Road bike path to just pay for a roundabout. That's not going to happen. But we've had a lot of private money, and this is some of the stuff that I think the planning department needs to work on, and it's very hard for us to do that because we don't have a staff person to just deal with sort of putting out information. But the prospects, Pleasant Street, for example, all the improvements you see on Pleasant Street have all been done with private money. Every single thing you're seeing now, from Cape Cod 5, Dan's, is all private. We're sort of finishing things now. The town is filling gaps. We've got bike paths that sort of end somewhere, like the Humming Pond Road bike path. I was actually asked this question the other day: when are we going to finish the Humming Pond Road bike path? See, we built this whole bike path, but we didn't do Milk Street, so in some people's minds we didn't finish it, and it's like, okay. It's amazing how the public sees this. So we're sort of fixing now. It's a little different time, Dan, than we didn't have a bike path on Pulpus Road, we didn't have Old South, we didn't have Fairgrounds. Now we've done, I don't know how many miles of bike path do we have? I think it's like 70 something.
I thought
think
it was
it's more than that.
I think it's more than that.
It's a lot of miles.
Yeah.
It's so we're sort of looking at things from a sort of okay, let's finish this little project. We're going to finish this little project, connect this, link this. And that's paid for by seasonal taxpayers for the most part. And so when we approve things at town meeting, we're really spending 88% of the money is somebody else's money that's not at town meeting. It's the seasonal taxpayer. So we need to look at Nantucket from a sort of all these little moving parts to get some of this stuff done.
Well, I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna argue the tax thing because we're here to argue
It's okay.
traffic.
It's all part of it, though. When you talk about paying for it,
It is,
But last night we pushed forward $100 and something million worth of sewer projects in the next 2 years, which are going to have substantial impacts on the people who will be bettered as well as the taxpayers. And so, granted we've got some dropping off, but we've got to also be willing to find some creative ways to do some of the fix some of the traffic. So I think a downtown parking there's a value to it. I think we should be considering that. That would be the money to help build a parking garage. That's the money to help do some of the improvements. So there's other ways to look at
What
it.
about the argument that, all right, For 2 months, it's hell.
Yeah, well, that's
And then for the other 9 months, it's fine. So for the 2 months that it's hell, we can live with that. This goes back to the question of the 88% where the tax revenues come from. It comes back to the standpoint of what impact does it have on business, even in those 2 months. What are your thoughts on that, Leslie?
Well, getting people to where they need to go is important. And from, my chamber hat perspective, people can't really go to our businesses, enjoy them, spend time there, spend their money there when they can't find a place to park, when there's, extreme timed parking. And I agree with Matt, there is a value to parking. There's a value to the customer, there's a value to the business owner. And we do need to come up with some solutions to get people there. And I think, if it takes you, 45 minutes to get downtown, you might not go downtown, you might go get your milkshake somewhere else.
And I think that's what we're seeing with the new Stop and Shop. I think we're seeing a lot of, some of the problems that we have downtown, once that opened, got exported out of town. We had to put our parking along Pleasant Street because all the employers in that area were saying to their employees, don't park in my lot. So they were parking in each other's lots, and they were parking on street right in front of the businesses. So some of the problems that we have downtown, we just exported into the Mid-Island, which, those are the complaints that we get at the selectmen's level, and, the planning is aware of those. So.
Matt?
I have a couple of things to add to that. First, I'd say that let's just go back 20 years. 95 was the first year of, I guess I would say, growth management sort of coming to the forefront, the building cap. Then a few years later, Matt's article for the limiting cars. We've had we've had 20 years to kind of look at this thing, and in my opinion, we're seeing we're sort of doing our own study, where every year it's the same, as Leslie said, but every year people think it's worse. That's because it's fresh. The weather has a lot to do with it. Like today, I went to the school, the Surfside Road side of the school intersection. On my way here, there was 5 cars at the tree. At 5 o'clock, it's going to be backed up to the Muse. That doesn't mean that we have a problem. That means that either everybody's at the beach and everybody's working. Nantucket is we have to look at things from a perspective of like, we're 100% employed in Nantucket. I mean, this place is a dynamo of business and changeover. Once the cars are here on at the end of June, the same number of vehicles come on Saturday and the same number of vehicles leave. It's just a turnover. And middle of August, everybody starts to leave. So we really only have to deal with the annoying relative living in our house for about 7 to 8 weeks, and that's it. And they're paying for a lot of different things. It isn't just the property tax part of it, it's the business part. So we have a lot to look forward to. We look forward to September and October. I mean, we have the fast ferries. 12,500 more people came on the steamship fast ferry this year so far. They're not bringing cars. We used to hear mopeds. We got to get rid of mopeds. That was something back in the day, man.
Oh, yeah. No.
Get rid of those mopeds.
Because the cars will go faster.
Because that's right. Now,
and we got rid of them because the cars took over. It was too dangerous to ride a moped.
Well, our roads are too narrow, which is another discussion.
Well, I understand.
We voted for our roads to be narrow without really doing it. Okay, in the 90s. Now,
I voted 300 years ago for our roads.
I'm not going to tell you where I heard it from, but I'm going to tell you what the next complaint's going to be in the next 10 years. There's too many bikes. You watch. If we start, if somebody,
lead that charge?
I would never say that. I'm in favor of giving the bike all the room they want. I don't care if they're riding on the road. I do, but you can't, yell at them out the window. Okay? Well, it's not the right thing.
I bike at least an hour a day, and I get yelled at 2 or 3 times a day.
It's not the right thing. Okay? It'd be like saying we have too many electric cars if you say we have too many bikes. My point is, though, we all have to live here together. We need to slow down, relax, and get over it. It's not going to last forever. If this was going on year round, it'd be a different story. As far as moving things to the Mid-Island, now Matt is onto a new topic, but I think we're doing Mid-Island the right way. I think everything after Kitty Murtaugh's has been done right. Kitty's building would have been near the street had it been done about 2 years later. Okay, and the parking would have been in the back. The biggest problem with Mid-Island is getting everyone to share their parking. We can't make it the new downtown with parking lots. Downtown doesn't have a parking lot. I'm talking about individual places.
Right.
There is no parking in town, and it's been that way for 100 years. So we have to look at Mid-Island as we need to share parking, and that's an issue that the planning department is dealing with right now with some of the special permits. So businesses,
How would you do that? I mean, maybe you're not ready to say yet.
the
but
Mid-Island overlay
Well,
plan.
yeah, the Mid-Island Overlay District encourages shared parking between businesses. It gives the business owner credit for public parking spaces within a certain distance.
But only a new business, a new building.
A new building,
Yeah.
yeah, or changes to some
Right.
existing business if they needed to expand. And one issue that we've had with that is we can't really force people to sign easements with the budding property owners if they're
Right.
part of the application. But most people are, open to the idea because they don't have parking either. So if, the business hours are staggered where one's open at night and one's busier at lunch,
That's great.
they're willing to share. The
Yeah.
planning board's been trying to implement the on-street parking on Pleasant Street. I mean, Stop and Shop was really the first opportunity to see that. Dan's Pharmacy provided easements to implement on-street parking at some future time.
Yep.
We've talked about it with other applications as well. But I
Cape
think
Cod 5 has it.
Cape Cod 5.
They've
that's
done a
right.
good job there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people need to remember, we have two main business areas. We have the downtown, and then we have Mid-Island. And I think we need to take care of the people in both areas.
Right.
And, try to meet the needs, which are different. They're not the same exact needs. for
But there are
both.
some similarities now, which is interesting there. The
Yeah.
other way I think we can do it is by fixing the sidewalks there and making it easier to walk between businesses and safer to walk through the Mid-Island. And that
Which is-
if we do that, then when someone parks, they'll be able
Well,
to
it's
walk.
also true downtown.
Yeah, it is.
I
It is.
mean,
Well, we have the sidewalks you can
Another
walk
show
on.
for
That's
that,
right.
Dan.
We're not allowed to talk about parking on sidewalks. That's
No, I'm not talking about
No,
parking
he
on
means
sidewalks.
that-
I mean-
I love getting you going on that.
No,
but
we can talk about
No,
that.
I'm
That's another
talking,
show.
I'm talking about walking on the sidewalks.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
he's talking about
No, I
that.
understand.
And as we get older, it becomes more difficult. I shudder at the thought of the idea of cobblestoning more streets just from that perspective.
How about Quinn Street?
Small
we
streets.
fix the sidewalk and 2 days later it's ruined.
Yeah.
We fixed it wrong.
Yeah,
That's
we
the
did.
problem.
We did, but
The curbing's too high, but that's another story.